Welcome to This Week in Local, a Locology podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Locology analysts Mike Boland and Charles Lachlan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Mike Boland, joined by my co-host, Charles Lachlan. Hey, Charlie, how's it going?
Going well, Mike. How are you?
Good. So you are looking at the latest happenings, and it's always been up and down, around TikTok. So what are you looking at?
That's right. Well, I wrote, I think recently, let's just say, about what's happening with TikTok's ad spending growth. And in sort of the broader context is, TikTok US in particular, the quote unquote ban, which you and I have talked about quite a bit. And we sort of both reject the ban label on this, which we can get into. I don't think we have to repeat ourselves there. But anyway, the legislation requiring TikTok to divest its U.S. operation. What impact is that having on all of the metrics around TikTok? And one of those is ad spending growth. And essentially, without getting into a lot of details, what has happened is TikTok ad spend is still growing, but the rate of growth has considerably slowed. And the question is this an overhang of the quote unquote ban, or is there some other reason behind it? And another thing that's sort of going on is that, monthly average user growth is also, by most accounts, slowing. And sort of this is general perception that TikTok US in particular is not growing like it used to. And, there's a couple theories around why that is. On the ad side, there's a sense that advertisers might be looking at the quote unquote ban and saying, maybe we should kick a few other tires and move our money elsewhere, or at least not, invest as aggressively going forward in TikTok. That may be the reason. But one thing I've noticed in sort of digging around a little bit in this is that a lot of these stories were popping up in March. And the legislation was signed by Biden in April. So things were happening before. Now, there was the overhang of this pending ban at that time. So it might have been just the anticipation of it was having an impact at that time. But regarding sort of the user side, I saw some interesting headlines from, everything from TechCrunch to Business Insider and others, blaming a variety of things for why users are starting to, maybe not, come onto TikTok at quite the rate they've been. TikTok is still killing it. I mean, let's not deny it's still growing. It's not shrinking. It's not disappearing on its own, ban or no ban. But a few things that have been cited. One is the TikTok Shop. And I believe it was sort of tested late 22 and it rolled out, I think, September 23. And TikTok Shop is sort of their e-commerce play. And, obviously to try to get TikTok in the e-commerce game and give creators another monetization path, and et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that has sort of happened, and this isn't really quantified, it's just a vibe around TikTok Shop, is that it has led to all of these creators talking about how to make money on TikTok Shop, or here's the product that I'm selling on TikTok. So it's sort of crowded out a lot of the content, and it's just sort of polluted. TikTok is polluted with TikTok Shop related content. I've noticed this just as a casual, I got 10 minutes to kill. Why don't I scroll through TikTok for a few minutes? It's a lot of TikTok Shop stuff, and it's a bit of a turnoff. I'll have to admit. That is, an observation of one very casual TikTok user. But nonetheless, you read about this and then you see it yourself. It sort of validates that notion as well. So it just seems like things are a little softening a little bit with TikTok, and what's behind it. Another thing I read is maybe it's because all the 20-something TikTok generation, for lack of a better term, that makes me cringe a little saying that. One headline I saw was "Life may be getting in the way." They're sort of growing into adulting, and maybe that's TikTok time. I don't know. There's a lot of things floating around, and even if TikTok isn't forced to sell, I think that's what the law says they will be forced to sell. At what pace, we don't know yet. But there may be some other things going on. with TikTok that it's not dying, as I said, but it's softening a little bit. I don't know,
Yeah.
Mike, if any of these things jump out.
Oh yeah. So a lot there. I think there's a lot of validity to all of the sort of theories that you just listed for
Hmm.
like the enshittification of TikTok, if we can call it that.
Yes,
So
let's write
so
that one down. Yeah.
right. So first, the sort of advertisers taking a wait and see approach, I think is very valid, because if we back up for a
Hmm.
second, to be successful as a marketer on
Hmm.
TikTok, it's a learning curve. It's not like you just suddenly pick up, a new sort of medium and you're just sort of porting
Right.
over your 30-second ad spot to it. There's sort of a learning
Uh-huh.
curve. There's an upfront cost and an investment in like learning it, doing it right. And I think that advertisers that don't want to dive into that and just sort of apply that investment, if the platform's not going to be around in a month. So there might be a little bit of that happening. So that sort of
Yeah.
advertisers like, sort of spooked by all of the geopolitical drama, I believe that. The second
Yeah.
thing is, yeah, I've heard a lot of sort of murmurs and gripes from TikTok sort of diehards about exactly what you said. It's sort of just become cluttered. And again, if we
Mhm.
step back and look at the nature of TikTok and why that particular sort of thing, that trend has an actual impact, TikTok has always been this sort of like raw, uncensored vibes, real,
Yeah.
genuine. And once it becomes a commercial zone, the difference is very stark, especially to those like early diehards and
Yeah.
fans that were there
Yeah.
because it was just like this genuine place where everyone's real and raw. Then it becomes
Yeah.
like all these sort of polished side hustle, how to types of things, and it becomes something
There's a
different.
ton of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So it becomes something different. No value judgment on if that different thing is good or bad, but
Well,
it's
yeah. Well,
different
I
and it's
think it goes
jarring.
from, yeah, this may be a little unfair or not, but it goes sort of the movement from people just jumping on and being real to learning how to do TikToks, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the sort of professionalization. I use that advisedly. The professionalization of TikTok creation, maybe making it all less authentic. Even though I don't think that there's a professional vibe to a lot of it anyway.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's still a lot of people walking down on their morning walk holding their phone out with their hand. But
Yeah. Now, I should
there is,
clarify
yeah,
what I
a little more,
said
too
too.
much studying how to do a TikTok,
Yeah.
maybe.
And I should clarify what I said. Very raw, very genuine, all that's there. But there's also a great deal of production quality that goes into creating the TikToks.
That's
So
definitely gone up.
the
Yeah,
content itself is like raw footage and honesty and stuff like that. But there is a certain amount of production rigor that goes into
absolutely.
it. So it's combining those two things, which I
Yeah,
always
for
thought was an
every
interesting
person
mix.
creator sitting in their car, when you still see a lot of that, I
Yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
understood that. But
Right.
there's
I think
still a
it's
lot of
the
that.
sound quality. It's probably the best sort of
It's a
sound
little
booth
enclosed space.
that
It's a way to
anyone
get away from
has.
everyone who makes noise in your
Yeah, yeah.
house.
The best sound
Yeah,
booth anyone has is probably their car.
yeah, I think that's probably it.
That's my theory for the
Anyway,
car thing. But anyway, so another point to raise here is one of my pet peeves is when people start ringing alarm bells because revenue growth decelerates. Because a lot of people don't realize it's actually supposed to. If you have linear
law of large
growth,
numbers.
the law
Yeah,
of large number, especially when you start from a small base as TikTok has, you're going to see
right.
very large percentage jumps that quickly
Hmm.
then level off. So, for example, if I make $1 in revenue my first year and then $2 in
Hmm.
revenue my second year, that's 100% or a 2x jump in revenue. On the
Right.
third year, I make $3. That's a 50% jump in
Right.
revenue. Then the next year I make $4, and that is a 33% jump in revenue.
Yeah, yeah.
The fifth year, $5, 25% jump. The percentage goes down with linear growth. So people
Right.
shouldn't, ring alarm
That
bells
is,
when that happens.
that always happens. You're right that multi-billion-dollar companies don't grow at 80% a year generally.
Yeah.
That said, it's the timing of the deceleration.
Oh,
that
sure.
has gotten-
Yeah. You look at all
Yeah.
these things in totality, there's
Mhm.
reason to ring alarm bells, but that alone is one that always just, whenever I see
No,
people.
you're right. You're absolutely right. But I do think if this deceleration had happened gradually over 22, 23, might have made less of an impact than if it's sort of happening as this
Yeah,
quote unquote ban is coming into being, and then the
totally.
timing leads to that conversation, and we've both acknowledged that that certainly may have a dampening effect on brands' decisions around TikTok. And that was sort of in everything I read. There was no quote from a big CPG brand manager saying we're slowing down on TikTok until we see what happens with TikTok USA and the legislation. There's no one on record saying that's why they're doing it, at least that I've seen.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's not happening.
Yeah. Well, sort of, brand managers and media buyers, they're often pretty risk averse. So everything you said about
completely.
that theory lines up. I buy it totally that they're in that sort of wait and see mode.
Well, the other one that I just found funny was the people are growing out of TikTok, and I think I'd have to go do a little more research on demographic numbers to see if there's anything under that other than somebody just talked to their sister who said, I'm not using TikTok anymore because I'm too busy at my job.
Yeah.
That might be all the research that has been done on that point. It did have a certain amount of sense to it, but I don't know that that's a validated theory. I think that's just a theory at this point.
Well, yeah, you see that a lot with social media where, it grows with the user base. Like the average age of Facebook is, it's Gen X and boomers, whereas TikTok is probably more Gen Z and Y.
Yeah, and people do grow in and out of things, and so there may be something to that. I just think that the others might, we might be more comfortable pointing to the other factors like TikTok Shop. You can see with your own eyes the flooding of content, and for me, it's a turnoff. But again, I'm sample of one here. But
I've heard that a lot. I've heard a lot.
It's an observable thing. It's observable. The algorithm usually sends me history, quizzes, politics, etc. Now it's sending me TikTok Shop pitches. It's like, so everybody must be getting them. Because I haven't bought a single thing from TikTok Shop, probably never will. But I'm getting all this content, so everyone must be.
If we step back and define TikTok Shop, it's interesting. It's not necessarily like a storefront. It's sort of like a network or a taxonomy that ties together TikTok content through
you
tags.
Got to create your own little TikTok shop, basically, right?
Yeah, well, and then you tag products, like you can tag products from Nike and major brands, and then it takes based on that, the tagging structure is really what ties it all together. Then it takes them either to their TikTok sort of shop store or to their own e-commerce store.
Right.
But it's interesting. It's basically the TikTok's ways to like bring these e-commerce tentacles into the content. The downside is
Amazon. Yeah.
Right. But the downside is now that that's happening, is it ruining the content? Is it dragging down the content itself?
It's become the favorite side hustle. And you can make millions on TikTok Shop. I mean, I have seen that video 100 times in the last week, and I'm not even on TikTok that much. So, at that point, immediately made sense to me.
And I think we've talked about this before. The folks that are doing that, I think they see a way to like get in favorably with TikTok's ranking algorithm, which may favor its own things that are, promotional of TikTok Shop. So someone may think, I will get
if I sell TikTok,
boosted.
TikTok's going to sell me.
Yeah. Right.
Pretty much. There's probably something to that. I mean, doesn't everything work that way?
Yeah. Or at least that's the psychology of the people doing it. Whether or not the ranking algorithm actually does that, they may think, I will the algorithm gods will shine favorably upon me if I, make this.
There's a lot of TikTok. Yeah, there's a lot of TikTok content that talks about optimizing it for search. I don't hear a lot of people saying, and if you mention TikTok a lot, TikTok will boost you. I have not heard that.
Well, it's all about discoverability in TikTok, and they're just like personalization algorithms for sort of what you get when you open your feed.
Right. Okay, Mike, why don't we end it there? I'm sure we'll come back to TikTok at some point in the near future.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. You can find the show on all major podcast networks and find out more at locology.com. So please subscribe, like, and comment. Your engagement helps others find us. And if you're interested in being a guest or sponsor, you can email us at podcast@locology.com. So I'm Mike Boland with Charles Lachlan. Our producer is Dara Sweat. So thanks for listening and see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Locology's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Lachlan. Be sure to subscribe for more.